I've always preferred people lie to me. Look,
And
don't
now we
tell me.
know.
Yeah.
Please say I'm good looking. I don't want to hear the truth.
Today on That Car Show, it's Subaru of America's Director of Communications, our pal Dominick Infante. We touch on everything from Subaru's unique space in the American automotive landscape, to their commitment to manual transmissions, to their unique approach to EVs. Dominick's the real deal, with an interesting backstory and some real insight into the business of cars. Oh, and he's got a secret garage full of old British stuff too. Stay tuned. It's Subaru's Dominick Infante, and it's That Car Show.
Welcome back to this week's episode of That Car Show. I'm Lindsay, and I'm here with Ryan.
Hey.
And this week we are joined by our friend Dominick Infante, the Director of Communications for Subaru North America. Dom and I met at the Goodwood Revival, actually, a few years ago during a record heat wave that saw them lift the period-correct costuming dress code for the first time ever in the history of the event. It was a memorable time for sure. And we've been friends since then. We've been lucky to meet up when we're in the same town, which is often at an auto show. Dom has had roles at the University of Miami and at Chrysler before coming to Subaru more than 14 years ago. He is a real enthusiast and a driver. He is known for putting together truly memorable press trips, which really showcase the capabilities of Subaru's cars. And he has quite a unique collection himself. We love Subaru here on That Car Show, and we're excited to welcome Dom to the show today. Hi, Dom.
Hello. Hey, good to see you guys.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. So you are like truly, you live the enthusiast life. You have a great Instagram feed. It's always fun to follow along on your adventures. So can you tell us a little bit of how you got into cars? Were you always a car guy? And then talk about a little bit of your career path and how you found yourself where you are today at Subaru.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was always a car person. I don't know why. My parents told me I made car noises before I spoke. And
Love that.
I can genuinely remember seeing my first E-Type, first Corvette, things like that. Those are in my memory. And for some reason, cars always spoke to me. My parents weren't car people. They did own a few interesting cars, but I think by accident. I don't think my dad owned an old Cord, coffin nose Cord 810, but literally he drove it in New York City as a beater car. It was probably
The
like 30 years
accidental
old, or
enthusiast.
20 years old or something. And then my mom had a Cinquecento when she lived in the Bahamas, and we had a mini moke in the Bahamas as well. I
How
grew up in the Bahamas. I
fun.
was
Okay.
born and raised in the Bahamas, which is a little weird, but ended up moving to the U.S. When I was about 12. So, but I was into cars over there, and it was just one of those things. I was always a big fan of cars, and I think the only car my father was really into, he custom ordered a Volkswagen Beetle from Germany, to be sent to the Bahamas with the big sunroof and
Cool.
the
Oh,
whole
how
thing.
fun.
So that was like I think that was remained his favorite car that he ever owned. But not a car person, and I just got into it, and then. I think like many people, reading car magazines. I grew up in South Florida, so there were always interesting cars. And I was
Yeah.
very lucky that a good friend of mine, Marcello, his father is Italian, obviously. Well, I'm kind of Italian too, but his father's actually from Italy. He's from Capri, and he was a real car maniac, and he was always getting new cars. He's a very famous chef. He owned all these restaurants, and so he knew all the car dealers. So we always got a new car, so it was always something interesting at his house. And then Marcello would get his hand-me-downs, So we started off with Marcello had a 280Z, and then he had his Alfa Romeo GTV6. I was very lucky. My first car was a Fiat X19,
Wow.
which
Fun.
was as wonderful and awful as they are known to be.
All at the
Literally
same time.
hilariously fun to drive. It was a great car to learn on because you had 0 horsepower and you learned about momentum. You learned to pick lanes. You could tell who's slowing faster, who's accelerating faster than anybody else. So it made me really think through driving. And from there, after many accidents, within about a 2-month period, getting my license, I had a used Honda Civic.
Look at that.
I had a good run there for a few months. I was pretty cool, and then brown Honda Civic, which was actually a great car. Actually, I'm not gonna say anything bad about that. That was a great car. And that really, I was very fortunate. I was a Formula One fanatic before you could really watch Formula One all the time because I could read about it in Road and Track, and which I did. And had these great writers, Rob Walker and Ennis Ireland, who used to write about former drivers. And it's funny, I'd read about these things and thought it was just great, but I had no idea who Sterling Moss, Fangio, all these people were. My father maybe had a little bit of knowledge, but didn't really know. He wasn't really into cars or into racing. But they would know them because they would happen to go to Bahama Speed Weeks, right? Because you had
Right,
all
right.
the great
yeah.
guys would come down there in the early '60s when my parents were living there, and so I think you just went to the races because that's what you did. It's an island. There's only so many interesting things you can do, and then you're bored and you're like, oh, something's going on. Let's go to that. So they were there, but they don't remember any of the drivers. But yeah, anyways, that's how I kind of got really into cars and into the motorsport side of it was through reading about it in magazines, probably like a lot of young people. And then, all of a sudden we could watch stuff on TV. I'm like, this is incredible. I can watch every Formula One race, before
All
long
of
before they
them?
became super popular. But yeah, so they were always kind of who I looked up to was the drivers of the Gilles Villeneuve and Nigel Mansell and stuff. I'm dating myself, but those were the guys I remember being really into, and it's funny because it was in my mind NASCAR was not a draw for me because the cars weren't as cool because they were still stock cars back then, right? So they were Fords, but they were like the ones your parents drove.
Right.
Right.
I look at Formula One and they're like going, oh, Ferrari, Aston Martins, and all these, very exotic cars.
Aspirational, yeah.
It seems way cooler. Why am I watching this? But now, now I learned to love it. I worked for Chrysler, and we did NASCAR with Chrysler, obviously back then with Dodge for a while when they were still in it, and I was very fortunate to get to go to some NASCAR races and eat a giant turkey leg and see some of that stuff in person. So it's been fun. Yeah, and then into Subaru, you got into rally. There were so many
Right.
rallies to go to, and following Peter Stolberg and all. So I've been with Subaru for 21 years, actually, not 14. So it's been a while. Yeah,
Even better.
yeah. And I just want to
Congratulations.
say though that as a Florida Gator, I did work for University of Miami, but I did not do a good job on purpose. But I was
By
making-
design, right?
but
You're
I'll
like,
make sure
don't
people
worry,
understand,
I got you.
No, it was a great place to work. I actually started off as a journalist, as you were saying, how I got into it. Kind of always was kind of a writer and wanted to go into being, I don't know, maybe road and track, car driver or something like that. Was trying to figure out, couldn't really see a path towards that. So I ended up getting a job with a business magazine. I became a business writer and was doing that and finally convinced the editor, the publisher, to let me write about cars. I'm like, look, we can sell car ads if I write about cars, right? So that's how I started reviewing cars, and
Smart.
then I learned about the world of automotive PR, and I'm like, well, that looks actually really cool. And so I asked a couple people, and they're like, yeah, just get some PR experience. So I got a job with the University of Miami. I got a job that became the director of communications for the School of Business there, and started doing PR, and then an opportunity that almost became a career path, and then an opening came with Chrysler to work for doing regional PR, and then I went to the Kremlin, as they say. I had to go to Detroit, moved to Detroit.
You had to go do your time.
Yeah, did my time in Detroit. It's actually great because when you get there, you have access. You can talk to the engineers and then talk to the designers. And you go to this giant design studio and you're seeing cars that are 10, 20 years out that they're working on, like future stuff. And for a car geek, that was just nirvana.
Yeah.
To see all of that and to know all it and get to know the designers and see what they're doing, and they're so far thinking in the way that they attack and approach everything. It's just so great. And then had wonderful engineers who are explaining the smallest pinpoints on a car and how much effort goes into creating a car. And like there are guys who do nothing but work on the motors for windshield wipers, but they're trying to make it the best, and it's really fun to see all that insider stuff. And then I think what shocked me about the auto industry was I was like, look, this is such a gift to be a part of this. This is so wonderful. How can you not be a car enthusiast? And they weren't. And what you understand is, like, for a lot of people, yeah, there were car guys in there, but these were just good jobs in Michigan, and that's why they wanted to work there. And so that's was kind of a revelation to me that not everyone's an enthusiast in the industry. There are some who it's just like it's just cool, but they could have worked for someplace else. And for me, I don't think it would have been quite as cool as if I was doing PR for Whirlpool, or not that it's not a wonderful company, but in my mind, I'm like, I get to talk about and work with cars on a regular basis. This is great.
Yeah.
Right.
And then took an opportunity to come to Subaru, and kind of been there ever since. And that's been fun, just because it was a little bit smaller company, but you could do a little bit more creative things because you were doing with like a smaller groups and things like that. So it became a great asset. And then, I really, kind of bought into the philosophy of the company, which is, so philanthropic and so into giving back to the community and doing things like that. We actually, we're part of our goals. One of our goals is essentially, we call it our Love Promise goals. Our old CEO, Tom Dahl, came up with this thing called the Love Promise, which is, trying to live your life a certain way and to give back to communities. And through that, one of our goals, we have to go do some good deeds, because without that, I'm actually a terrible person. This makes me be good for at least a day or half
So
hour.
it brings it back into
time,
alignment.
where I could go do something. We donate locally to the Phil Abundance. We actually grow vegetables at our very Subaru, but we have a garden, and we actually grow vegetables through the employees, and we actually donate them to food shelters, and we do a lot of things like that, and we're always allowed to volunteer, so you can we take work time to go volunteer, and then we'll do things here
Love
at
that.
the office. We'll pack boxes and things like that around the holidays for people, and not just around the holidays. I mean, we do a lot of that, and like I was just saying, we just did our impact report, and we did. Our employees donated 15,000 hours to local communities. That's just our employees.
Yeah.
That's not any of the giving that we actually do. We donated 26 million through our Share the Love event. So we donate every year on a basis like that. So for a small company, we are giving back a lot, and so that actually, you do feel good about that. It is a genuine vibe, and I hope people actually understand that it's not just advertising. That
Right.
the company really, we do try inside as well, and I think that helps. Hopefully the way we deal with our customers when we go.
Well, that's all
Quite
well and
literally.
good, Dom, but tell us about the dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think that is a stroke of marketing genius. You're at the LA Auto Show, and all of a sudden there's a pen of puppies up for adoption. I mean, how do you not stop by the Subaru booth?
It is, and it's funny. It's just one of those things that where we're really trying to redefine ourselves. We looked at our customers, and our customers gave us a lot of feedback. So, a lot of times, when you're in the industry, you get hate mail. Like my car, it stinks. It broke down on me. Blah blah blah. We were getting all these letters from customers that they loved their cars, and they bonded with them, and they always gave us advice on what we should do with the cars. That the car became
Really?
part of their
So
family.
they were taking the time to write in and tell you how happy they were.
Every single thing that they think we should change on the car, they wanted us to do. So it's like being in a family. I can criticize my sister, but you can't, right? So
Exactly.
Right.
they're very protective in that way, but they also do tell us what they want. But when we looked, okay, we're like, well, okay, who really are our customers? Because we had always chased this customer. At that point, I think there was a sentiment that, inside it, people were trying to make it the Subarus a little bit slicker, wanted to be almost like a German car company, wanted to be a BMW, and we looked at our customers, and that's what they wanted. When we looked at them, what we did, we saw like a psychographic, right? We call it through the marketing folks, and one of the things they noticed was that 80% of our owners, they own pets. And then when we looked into that a little bit deeper, the majority own dogs. So not that there aren't cat owners, and they do reach out.
Right.
They
They're
don't like to
represented.
show a cat in an improper light. We do get complaints if we did do an ad a few years ago where we had the Barclays, the dogs who drive the cars, their pet was a cat, and they
Yep.
went to a rest stop and it said no pets allowed, and they had to leave their cat in the car. Now we checked with ASPCA, we checked with everyone. The windows were down just the right amount and everything, but
That's hilarious.
That's right. You got
That
to
was
think
such a
about these
funny
things.
ad.
Yeah.
cat owners were not happy, and they were like, "How dare you leave the cat in the car?" It's like, well, it says no pets, but also these scenarios aren't real. These dogs aren't really driving the car.
This is magical, but
Yeah,
not
but it's been
actual.
fun. It's been really fun with that advertising. But it did kind of look, and we did more dogs in the ads even because it was so organic. It's so natural for our brand to be involved with pets that way. And then when we were looking at things to do, we redesigned the way we do the auto shows a few years ago, about 8 years ago, and we were looking at what we could do. I would say my brilliant part in that was give people some place to sit down, and they'll stay longer.
Yes.
Because if you've ever been to an auto show, you're walking around, your feet are dead, You're like,
Right.
man, I wouldn't, if I could sit down somewhere, I would just stay here.
I would hang out.
So
We
we
talk
did
about
that.
that
Yeah.
all the time here of like
Yeah.
Subaru has created a true respite in the middle of the auto
Yeah,
show and it's
yeah.
delightful. So yeah, I'd love to hear more
That
about
was
it.
the idea. Once you come in there, it's an oasis from the rest of the show.
Right.
And we actually, at one of our we call them a retailer meeting, it's our dealer meeting every year, we worked with a local shelter and we thought it'd be a neat thing to adopt some dogs. And it went very, very well. So much so that people were renting cars to drive home. They were taking the dogs, it was in Vegas, and they were taking the dogs and they drove home to Colorado and they drove home
Wow.
to wherever because they were, because we had an area where they could bond and play with the dog, not just see it, sadly caged up or whatever. This gave you
Right.
time to play with an adoptable dog. And we're like, well, we should do more of this. And the auto show was the natural progression from that. And we started doing that, and it became a thing like everyone knows. And when you go there on media days, as you guys know, when you're there, I'll talk to the folks from other car companies, and they're like, "God, we love coming over to your. It's always just great. We get a smile. We come over here, and it's so smart. We love that you're doing this." And so it's part marketing, it's part intelligent marketing, I would say, but it's also
Yeah.
partly true to the brand. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the artifice isn't really that much in a sense. And we work with every single auto show we do in the U.S., big or small. We work with local shelters. We pay them for their time and for the cost that it would take to bring the dogs over, and we do get a lot of dogs adopted. Thousands of dogs that get adopted, and it's just a nice piece of the show, right? That we get to add on, and everyone's happy because you come and you'll see a line of people to pet dogs. The people who want to go see the cars, they're happy. They're looking at
Yeah.
cars, and the people who don't necessarily who get dragged there, little kids, they're over here
Yeah,
playing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a nice day out, So we
Yeah.
make it hopefully a little bit fun.
Everybody wins. And I mean, and like you said, it's not an artifice. Like you guys are quite literally putting your money and your intention where your mouth is, and you're actually living this, like you said, the love promise and the focus on giving back and improving the community. And it's such a treat to go to the show and see the dogs and spend time in the, Subaru National Park and just,
Yeah,
it makes
yeah.
you want to hang out.
Well, that's another one of the things when we were looking, we created this share the love. So everyone has a sales event around the holidays. And when we looked at what our customers were doing, giving back and philanthropy were a big part of what they were doing, part of their interest. We went and so we're like, well, okay, what if we do that? But instead of providing a discount, we'll take the discount, we'll donate it to a charity. So we came up with 6 charities, and once again, we kind of reached out and wanted to see what our customers would do, and national parks were a big part of that. So National Park Foundation, then the ASPCA because of the pets,
Right.
so we started with these initial charities, and then we said, okay, but that doesn't mean everyone's going to want that. So we allowed our retailers to localize it in their towns. So if there's a particular, you may live in Sandusky, Ohio, and there might be a particular charity that does a lot of great work there, you could nominate that to be part of that. And so the retailer can then put sales from his store can go towards that. But the customer always has a choice. They can
Yeah,
select
yeah.
that. But you would
That's
add that
really
to the
cool.
list of that town because it's a local charity that you may have been impacted by. So once again, it was like kind of a natural growth of what we were kind of already doing, and kind of bringing that down. And then of course, then after that, the retailers get behind it, and then they start getting involved, and then they're holding dog adoptions at their stores, and so it kind of was a nice thing. It kind of grew out of it, and like I said, a lot of this was from our CEO Tom. He was the person that was very big for him to give back, and then I joke I've been here for 21 years, and I'm still kind of a newbie at Subaru, and so our current COO is the same. He's been here for over 30 years when he got the job, and he had kind of come up with Tom as well as he'd spent his own time in the field, and so he saw how important that was as well. So we're carrying it forward. So
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, and then we're named part of Forbes's we're like top 3 brands for social impact, things like that. So it does pay off, and it's difficult. You don't see it necessarily advertised all the time or anything like that. We don't really focus on a lot of that, but we are living that life rather than just kind of making an ad and saying, okay, here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
love that. And so for people who haven't had a chance to see the auto show, presence, kind of the display. Can you just talk quickly about what it looks like and how you came up with that setup? Because it is so unique and notable, and it really sticks with you.
Yeah, we wanted you really to feel like when you're at especially the big shows where you have the big kit.
Yeah.
So LA, Chicago, and New York, you are stepping into Subaru land. So it feels like you're in a forest. We have a TV showcasing, beautiful vistas of national parks. You pump in scents, so it smells like you're in kind of in the wild kind of a thing. There are park benches, there are things like that. There's a little fire, cookout, fire pit and things, So it feels very like you've gone camping or you're going
Yeah,
out to the
yeah.
trailhead. All that feel to it.
Yeah.
Yes, it really is unique. It's an oasis inside a show. Like if you're in New York City, you're at the show, you're in the Javits Center, but then there's this little oasis of just like this greenery and it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, and it's like it really feels really nice, and it's a great place. Sit down, your feet are sore. Hang, look at a Subaru.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Hopefully
know
buy a
with the,
Subaru.
with the fire pit, I'm like, we need some, marshmallows and graham crackers. Let's get the floors going.
Yeah. It's,
Yeah, and then in a little corner, we still have our motorsport stuff too.
yes. Yes. And
Right,
that's,
I was going to say, yeah, the rally history and activities are well represented as well. It's,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of brilliant on your part because you guys spend your time there during the show and you've created this beautiful space to spend
Nice place
time
to
in
be. I know
for
it's
everybody.
selfish, but I've been going to auto shows since I was like 12, and they were like sometimes in the middle of a mall, sometimes in wherever, and it was great. Was I was able to when I started with Chrysler. Chrysler did some pretty cool stuff for media days for the Detroit Auto Show, and it's really weird. In my mind, then when I kind of started taking over the auto shows, in my mind it was like, we're doing all of this work, and then the public never sees it. So we build these incredible facades and create these great things. Like we did like with the Dodge Viper, it was a giant box, Jack in the Box, and it burst open and snakes came out and there was a car in it. These
my
are
gosh.
really wonderful, cool things that unfortunately also maybe injured some people, but that's fine. But
That's another story for another time.
another story. But like, wow, wouldn't it be great to have this for the public? So everything you see at a media day now, like for a Subaru, the car comes up like it's coming up out of a volcano, like we did a few years ago, things like that. That happens all the way through for the rest of the week, so you're not missing out on what the media saw.
Right,
It's not just
right,
a grandeur
right,
just for
right.
that one day. It's like, well, why don't we just use it for the whole time, and then that way, it makes sense. You're amortizing your costs a little bit better. And I shouldn't be saying any of this because our competitors are listening.
No, but this is what we like to bring our audience. And even for us, like I'm learning, I didn't realize that was something that would typically have been done just for the media day. And I
Yeah.
think that's so smart. Like this is why we
I
love to
wish-
get people on.
I
'Cause
wish
we learn-
every young car enthusiast could go back to those old Detroit auto shows.
No, I know.
They were the money that was spent on those things was crazy, but man, it was cool. Mercedes created an ice rink and had professional ice skaters, Olympic ice skaters skating
Yeah.
on an ice rink. You'd build these incredible auditoriums that would just be torn down. So you had like a coliseum and around, and all these really, really amazing things. It was a really fun time, and it was great. I know the economies have gone away, and then everyone says auto shows are dying. They're just not as big as they were. But it's really when the corporate side of it looks and they're saying, they were looking at more from the media days aspect. So yeah, Detroit isn't what it used to be, and people aren't doing as many intros at auto shows. But you're still forgetting the consumer, the person who wants to walk in there.
Yeah.
We don't think that we're, for some of the brands, like for a Mercedes or a Porsche, you're such an established brand, and those customers are so established. We still think we need to be out there on the floor, and we want you to hopefully be surprised by how nice a car is. And I think people always like very sensible Subaru, and they're safe, but like they're actually a lot nicer than you think. Get in there, try one out. Hopefully you'll see it. Hopefully you'll be gravitating towards buying one.
Can I suggest that you bring the giveaways back? And the reason I mention that is, I was one of those kids back in the day at the Chicago Auto Show. I still have my metal Scion keychain. I still have my injection molded New Beetle, Volkswagen.
Oh, yeah.
I still have them. I'm 50. I can't throw those away. So I would love to see some sort of giveaway from the next Subaru. Is that in the works?
We haven't really done giveaways so much like that
Yeah.
in a long time. I know that was a thing, and also the brochures have gone away. I used to collect all the
Yeah,
brochures.
for
Right.
sure.
It's like, oh, I got the
I
jacket.
know.
Yeah.
We were just talking to John Childenko about that because he was saying that shaped his writing a lot. He would go to the auto shows and collect all of the marketing materials. And it was one thing we were commenting on was like the amount of text that used to be present.
Yes. Yes.
There was a lot to read. It was
Yeah.
And for
legitimate
nothing,
reading
there was
material.
nothing. Like you would look at the old BMW brochures, and the options that you could actually get would be a manual sunroof and a cassette player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the brochure was huge. But I'm like, that was a lot of crafty writing going into that, right? The advertising guys were working overtime because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
only so much you could say about the car, and then when you start getting into all the options, there was nothing. It's like, ooh, custom floor mats, with
Yeah, you're like,
you know,
hey,
you
yeah,
wow,
look at this.
That's
cassette
that's
player, wow,
that's right. That's right. But you
Yeah, they're
walk
like,
around the hall with that bag like it was Halloween, right? You're collecting your booty, and then you'd bring it home, spread it out on your bed, and I remember
Yeah.
Beautiful
chopping up
guns,
those.
too. There were some nice,
Oh yeah,
some nice work done by some of the manufacturers. And then
truly.
we would see the press kits wind up on eBay days later
Really.
you're kidding.
for stuff like Corvettes and Vipers, and
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
there was a secondary market of people who really wanted to buy and Ferrari, anything Ferrari, yeah,
Yeah, I bet.
very
That
sought
makes
after.
sense. Yeah, well, and I mean, we talked about that a lot. Like, that's one of the reasons that we share a lot of the events that we go to is because not everybody has the chance to attend. So we like to take our audience along with us. So that's kind of another illustration of
Yeah, you
like
need to
people
provide
that
the
can't
cool
go.
content, right?
Yeah,
And now it's all about content, and we consume content in so many different ways. But
Yeah,
some of it now is it's so much more visually, received. So you're like, okay, you need to make room for someone who's going to be shooting video for Instagram or for whatever,
Right,
TikTok or
right,
whatever.
right.
So it's kind of a new, that wasn't part of the. We
the
used to
considerations.
do long leads and short leads, which were long leads were for the car magazines, and then the buff books, and then you would do the short leads would be for more like newspapers and things like that.
Sure,
It's
sure.
in the old days when of print.
Yeah, yeah. Things have changed
And,
so much.
it was like so the whole cycle of how you do reveals of cars that's changed. It's much faster. It's much closer to the on sale date. All those things are different now.
Let me ask you, Dom. So, in your role, I assume that you monitor what automotive journalists write about your products, what content creators create around your products. We saw something very interesting, of course, play out recently with the launch of the Ferrari Luce EV, where journalists were so afraid to say anything bad about the thing that they stooped to praising like the door handles, right?
Yeah.
So, in your position, do you value honesty or flattery? Is a sweet spot somewhere in the middle? But I assume you monitor this, and you kind of know what people are saying.
I've always preferred people lie to me. Look,
And now
don't
we
tell
know.
please say I'm good looking. I don't want to hear the truth. It works for you in many ways when you get criticism. So, if you think something should be different on a car, or maybe we know the consumer is doing it, but there's always, when you work for a car company, the truth is at some point you've got to cost out things. And there's things you want, but it's like, okay, we think there might be more value in this or whatever. So if the media pick up on things and say, oh, it really should have this, it does often help us sway, the engineers and the product planners and things like that. We'll start like, okay, we should consider this. Maybe it is, and maybe it's something that'll be of value to the customer. And then you can then, I'll leave that to the marketing guys, but they can then take that to a focus group and say, okay, if we did this, we think this would improve. Because there's so much of the industry and the design that's inspiration and what you think people are going to want in the future, but you can't always get everything, right? So it's great to say, okay, you're hearing a lot about these, about Tesla style door handles. People don't like them. Why do we have those? Well, it's all, we know why. It's aero,
Yeah.
and because fuel economy standards are what they are, then they go forward, and you have to meet a corporate average standard. And so you're always trying to, it makes cars sometimes be less individual looking in terms of their styling, but why it's always going to be for aero or for something like that to try to improve economy. But so like I said, but criticisms in certain areas, yeah, and I don't know that the criticism of the Luce will make it styled differently. it may sell perfectly. I haven't driven it, so and then there's always someone who likes something that we used to have this guy that would talk to us. He was a brand expert, and he said, it's actually, if everyone likes something right away, it's actually not a good product. You need a certain amount of people not to like it, because otherwise it's not interesting. If everyone says yes, that's nice, right? So you know, it's
They're either lying or you miss the mark.
yeah, good is the enemy of great, right? So it's fine, but you're not striving to be a little bit
Right,
different.
right.
There should be a little
Inoffensive.
bit of
Yeah,
turmoil in a design, to look and like, hey, we're super. We've always had
yeah, yeah,
turmoil in our designs, right? So,
yeah, yeah.
we didn't get by on our looks. We got by because we make great vehicles, because and then and like I said, it's almost like a family thing. So, when the Bug Eye WRX came out, you know, everyone criticized the styling until we changed it. And everyone was like,
Right.
whoa, we love the Bug Eye. What did you
Like
do?
me.
Right, exactly.
Why did you do the Hawkeye? Then we changed the Hawkeye. And was like, whoa, the Hawkeye was great. So there's always that, there's always that change to the market where, you need to where people will start getting used to a design and then liking it. And if you go back long enough, they're really old. Actually, how old I am, I can remember the bangle butt on the BMW 7
Sure.
Series, which it was like, oh, this is like, what is this, a spaceship? It's crazy. It's
Right.
the worst thing I've ever seen. And then like 3 years later, you're like, looks pretty good.
I'm like, all right, fine.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, and
yeah.
like you said, turmoil, I mean, you could look at that too as like turmoil creates discussion, it creates engagement. If people are talking about you, a lot of people have the
Correct.
philosophy that's not a
Yeah.
bad thing.
Yeah. So
It's
yeah,
interesting.
it was interesting to watch that design though, and I mean, uh, there was a lot of interest around that car, right? That Ferrari got a lot of interest. The interior drew a lot of interest. So we'll see where it goes, and but then at the same time, how many are they going to really sell? And at that level, at that cost, what is that customer looking for? I don't know. I don't really see that data. I don't know necessarily. I don't
Right.
work for Ferrari. I don't work for a Ferrari dealership. I don't know what that person's really going to want. I remember there was a beautiful F430 at a Cars and Coffee I went to, and it was red, and the guy had spec'd the entire interior in blue Alcantara.
Oh,
And when
wow.
I mean the entire interior, every single surface except for the carpet was covered in blue Alcantara. And
And he's like, we tried to do the carpet. They said no.
yeah, like there was a optional fire extinguisher in there that was in a blue Alcantara
Good
holder.
Lord.
Like it was insane. The whole thing was just like this, and like
He's
I know
fully
that
committed.
you wouldn't slide around in the seats like this. You're really
Not
gonna,
at all.
you want to sit down and not slide in because you just like stick on the
Right.
seat.
You're just
But
stuck
it
there.
was very interesting. I wouldn't have chosen it probably, right? But somebody did, and that's the great thing about cars in my mind. There are people whose dream car was a Lincoln Continental,
Right.
or a Ferrari 250 GTO or 275 GTB, or an Aston Martin or whatever. Everyone, it's all individual, and I've always liked that, and I always say it's fine. You should like whatever you want. Like I can see a car and I would hate a car, and I'd be like, why would they? What would make you buy that? Like, what is wrong with you? But that person worked hard, and they bought that car.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, he's happy in
Yeah.
that. Okay, whatever.
Right.
She wanted that, so it's like, okay, yep, fine. That's at least they're car people in their own way, and that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
I
yeah.
approve of. Right? I'm happy that there are car people out there and people who really enjoy their cars.
Yeah.
Because it's look at next to a house, right? That's like the biggest
That's
investment.
it. That's
So
it.
hopefully you really like that product.
And you really Subaru operates in a really unique space, I think. You touched on this before, but there's this sort of duality, right? Where you're sort of like the everyman, every woman car, right? With all this goodwill, but you're also an enthusiast brand. I mean, that's a bloodline that runs strong through the years. And there's been a lot of talk about manual transmissions lately. I think there was an announcement by Subaru about some future commitment to the manual transmission. Can you touch on that a little bit? Because I'm curious about what Subaru's business case is, as much as us enthusiasts love the manual, what's the business case for keeping a manual? Is it the credibility with enthusiasts? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's that part of that's the engagement with the vehicle, right? It's a little bit when you're shifting your own gears, a little bit more to it than that. And that aspect, that was like a JDM announcement. That wasn't really Subaru
Okay.
America, but it is interesting and how people perceive their cars and want their cars to be. But automatic transmissions work great, and they've gotten better and better and better, and they get better fuel economy. It used to be in the old days you'd have a manual, it got better fuel economy.
Right.
That's not true anymore, where it's kind of flipped around. So it's really there for the enthusiasts, because it was cheaper and it got better fuel economy if you got a manual. And now it's like the engagement factor. So it's really interesting when we look at Subaru BRZ. Like almost 80% of the buyers choose manuals.
That's awesome.
It's one of the highest take rates of manuals. WRX and VRZ are both very high take rates for manual transmissions, even though we offer automatics on both. And then when we look at the Toyota sales, you flip it. The majority, almost 80%, are automatic.
Interesting.
And so they're basically the same cars. Some minor differences on the GRD6 but it's just whatever reason. Maybe it's our rally heritage or whatever. The Subaru customer is looking for the manual and wants the manual. And when you look at Porsche, also who make flat engines, maybe that's what the link is. They're all of a sudden Porsche was like, what, our buyers in America really want manuals. Even though we can show that this PDK is faster, it's faster shifting, it's more efficient, it's better in every way, but they want a manual.
Right.
And there is something to that. Like they're you're controlling your car in a different way. You're interacting with the car. Maybe there's something to it. But the writing's on the wall. You can see it's numbers decline, and then people aren't learning. Valley Park WRX TS recently, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, sir, would you mind parking yourself? The guy who knows how to drive one of those isn't here."
Gladly.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So, it's funny though, because even Ferrari's now teasing a manual again, and of course you're going to have to buy 10 Luces to get one. But I feel like it'll turn into really a niche product.
With the Ferrari, right? You had the gated shifter, right? It was
it was the coolest part.
Cool, Yeah, you could make click noises. I mean, that's pretty darn cool.
That's right.
Doesn't get better than that.
No. And it's also, I think, in that rarefied world of the hypercar and the supercar, what separates them from something else, and what was always a symbol of Ferrari? Well, it was that gated shift. Now, I don't know what we're going to do about the left knees of the people who are old enough to afford the Ferrari. Are they going to be good enough to to actually press it down? But hey, I don't know. But I remember with the the fight for the Viper, there was every now and then some people were like, you should make it automatic. And I remember the Viper team being very adamant to the hell of like, get the hell out of this meeting. They were, they were.
We are done here.
It was going to be a manual, But I guess at the end of the day, the consumer's always right.
Yeah.
Manual Ferrari would be really cool. Like, right? Who wouldn't support that?
Yeah.
Well, it's such an inherent part of Ferrari, at least for our generation, and I'd like to think people younger than us too. Like that's just, and like you touched on, it makes it a much more engaging driving experience. So, it just depends on what you want.
Yeah, I think you're in such an enviable position with Subaru right now, because it's just, no one's got a bad word to say about Subaru. Right? Everyone loves Subaru, whether you're an enthusiast, whether you're a regular person. It's just, and I know it's earned, right? It's hard earned through your programs and all this.
Hopefully, we get complaints here, we get criticism. I know that we know our cars aren't perfect, but I can always promise you that no matter what Subaru you drive, it will be safe.
Yeah,
it'll be put together well.
Yep.
Those were not always things I could convince you about other cars.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I know that, about our products, we're confident, at least in that standpoint. We do make a good car. You may not like it, you may not like its performance, you may want this or that, but it will inherently be a good automobile.
Yes.
Worry about that. And, the all-wheel drive, I remember, after driving Subarus for a while, I drove my ex-mother-in-law's. I drove her Toyota Camry, and I was just like, shocked at the way it felt so different. Front end was so different. Everything was different about it. I'm like going on, and I'm like, I've been so used to all-wheel drive now.
Yes.
Front-wheel drive, and I kind of forgot how a front-wheel drive car
Yep.
drove. Not that we don't test those cars. We do test competitive products, here and there. But was the first time kind of driving around in an older one, and I was like, going, oh yeah. I've kind of gotten used to the way our cars will handle, and because it's always a bit, and I don't know if all of our customers go, but I mean those of us who drive a little faster and push
Sure.
cars, like even an Outback, will it'll set properly in a corner. It's got a low center of gravity and it's got all-wheel drive. Once it gets into that corner, it will hold that grip. It's got great mechanical grip, and that's inherently part of the design of the all-wheel drive system and that flat engine, keeping that weight down low. Now we're seeing that going into EVs, much easier to keep the weight down low, but the weight is much higher. I think that's something we've been very good about is our EVs are very lightweight for EVs.
Yes.
Which is one of the design aspects. It's keeping that mass down.
Yeah.
When you get into some of these newer EVs, man, they are heavyweight. They are really heavy.
Yeah.
And I never thought about it until I was having one of my cars towed. As I have a lot of old English cars, and they like riding on the back of a flatbed here and there. I was talking to a guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I guess I had to picked up a Tesla," and he's like, he was like his whole truck was just trying to yank it up there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it looks like a normal car, but it's like almost 7,000 pounds. It's a lot of weight out there.
That
And then
used to be like a truck weight.
Well, it translates differently into the impact it has when you do have an accident, when you do hit another car.
Yeah.
It's
So
true.
weight is, it's good and bad in terms of crash, right? Too much is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting, and it's just a different world we're moving into with, and there are some great engineers out there who are able to mask the driving dynamics of that weight and make the car feel very light and fun, and I think that's something, we'll look forward to as we're going into and progressing into more and more EVs in terms of our brand. We're looking, okay, how do we make the car still have that feel of a Subaru, have that feel of a lighter car and a more fun to drive car rather than being, there's this heaviness that EVs bring.
Well, Lindsay, we both really liked, is it the Trail Seeker?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we thought
did.
we both drove it independently, but thought it was fantastic. And
Yeah, we both got to drive them at the different press kind of guild events that we have in our regions. I was at Mudfest with Carly, who is wonderful, by the way, from Dom's team.
He's great. Yeah.
I was with Miranda. So.
Yeah, who is also wonderful. We love, we love your whole team, really.
Yeah,
I have to say hi to Aaron, too.
Yep.
And we'll give him a pass today.
We have a great team, and I mean that's hopefully they're fun to be with. But yeah, I just spent the weekend in a long weekend in a Trail Seeker, and it is.
Yeah, tell us about that, about the event and everything, and what you guys were doing.
Well, actually, that was just me on my own, but I just freaking. But the thing with I hope that people will pick up. We designed those cars in conjunction with Toyota, and we really did share the design work, and that was important to us. We shared engineers. They all worked on the platform together because that's going forward. That's the kind of intelligence you need to gather. So just buying something from them wouldn't have helped us get that knowledge,
right?
But it was and you can then the Trail Seeker, we did a little bit more of the chassis work on that car, and it feels a bit more to me like more of a Subaru. It looks a bit more like a Subaru.
Definitely.
And it's just so usable, and that's why I think we do well with those products. Is so many EVs out there are trying to show you how futuristic they are.
Yes.
So that but you shouldn't get in the car and be like, all right, how do I start this? How do I put this into drive? At least with our products, you can get in. Okay, that's the AC. That's how I put it in drive. That's the start button. You can get in and just drive away, and it's usable in a sense that maybe some of the earlier products weren't. I just think that, especially the Trail Seeker, which has all that room in the back, super comfortable. It's very quick. It's I think that I really enjoy that car. I really like it. And, we just came up with the Uncharted, which is also really quick, really fun to drive.
Right. Another great
a smaller product size, cross-track size. And then we have the Getaway coming out. That's the 3-row EV. So that'll be towards the end of the year. And that's going to be probably one of the fastest Subarus ever made. It's going to be really quick.
Kudos to your team, because that's a great name for a car.
I know.
Like a great name for a Subaru. The Getaway.
And it allows you to get away.
I was a critic. I didn't like the name at first. And and I'm not making this up, but I've really warmed to it. Actually, as we got closer and closer to the reveal of that car, I was like, you know what? It's growing on me. I think it's actually pretty cool, and then with the power aspect of it, and it makes sense. It's like, that's what our owners do, right? A Subaru has to
Yeah.
be Subarus are an everyday car that can do a little bit of extraordinary things on the weekend, right? So you can go off-roading, you can do these things on the weekend. You drive it through a car wash on Sunday night, Monday morning, it's going to work, taking kids to school. It's doing all the things that a car needs to do, and that's the great duality I've always enjoyed about our products. Yeah, they're really, really good in snow,
Yes.
but
Yes.
also they're
I got
great in
to
rain.
I
Great,
got to put
yeah.
I had the Forester Wilderness for the Avance Women's Off-Roading event up here at Dirtfish, and it snowed the day that I got it in mid-March, which we were not expecting. So I got to put it to the test, and it was fantastic. I mean, and I think I told you because I got to take a Forester touring to the event a year ago this March, so March of 2025. And like you were commenting on sort of the multi-purposeness and the like extreme, capabilities of the cars because when I finished the first off-road day with the Forester, a couple of the corner workers came up to me and they said, we have loved watching this car do the course. It's so good. And we're not going to lie that when you first pulled up, you looked like a soccer mom that had made a wrong turn and somehow found herself on the off-road course. But I mean, they're phenomenal. And the wilderness was even more so because it's designed for off-roading. But I think it really speaks to the fact that the touring also did it no
Totally.
problem. And that's
Street
the,
tires.
higher end
Yeah.
street tires,
Yeah.
the whole thing. So I have loved sort of surprising and delighting people on the off-road days with the Subarus.
They are shockingly, and that's like one of the things that my background when I joined the company, I'd come from truck and Jeep. I did truck GPR Chrysler,
Okay.
and so the launches were very different than everyone else. Like we were trucks, I'm going to show how it tows. We're going to let you tow something. They have all-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive. You're going to take them off road. You're really going to do something. So I came into it with that mindset, and then
Okay.
when we started doing some of the stuff, I was like, let's see if we can do some off-road, create an off-road course. And the car was always better than I thought it would be, to the point where we were at an event. This is very early on when I started. We were doing something at the Forester, and this hotel we went to had a course that was set up by Hummer to test the Hummers, the old Hummers. And it was, now they were just not really using it for stuff. They had Jeep people would come and use it. And I remember the guy going, he's like, this was a '05 Forester or '06 Forester or something. He's like, you can't bring that thing. And I'm like, well, it's fine. Like, we're just here to test it. Let us just go out there on the course. And there was only one thing. There was a test for articulation, which is obviously the one thing you don't do without a body on frame and
Sure.
solid off road Jeep style suspension system. Other than that, he was just like, I can't believe it went up that. I can't believe it did that. Blah blah blah. We were just out at Hollyoaks out in Detroit this week, just 2 days ago, and we took a Forester, just a regular Forester, up one of the Moabs. They have a Magna designed a climb out there, and it's an exact duplicate of a climb that they do in Moab.
Really?
And and the guy was like, he's like, "Dang, that made it look easy." He's like, I was very surprised by that. We've had other cars out here, brands I'm not going to mention, that have not done that. And I'm like, yeah, they've always been a little bit better, and they've always had better ground clearance. And even stock, like an Outback has had better
Sure.
ground clearance
Sure.
than most everything else. Then you throw the wilderness packages onto them, and they really do have a tremendous. But it's also, a lot of companies will use very sophisticated, very expensive suspension systems to achieve that off-roading, and that's kind of the great thing about the Subaru is, like, we're doing it, but much more simply, much less expensively, and also then that means much easier to repair and change, and all that stuff. So the all-wheel drive system is really good. I remember the first time I drove one in snow, because being from Florida, I had moved to
Sure.
Michigan. I may or may have not gone off the road in snow before, and I remember driving in a Forester in a massive snowstorm, and I'm like going, "Oh my God, this thing is absolutely amazing!" It really is better. I mean,
Yeah.
people I have a friend who's gotten, working here, and he finally drove in a really big, heavy snowstorm. He's like, this really is better. And I'm like, what do you think? I'm lying to you for all these years? And I'm like, come on, like this is what I'm telling you. This.
Right.
It's a great system. I think the reason people love Subaru is Subaru is everything most people need in a car, right? And it's done really, really well. And I think the even bigger thing is that authenticity is just missing in so many avenues anymore. And Subarus just feel authentic, right? Like what you see is what you get, right? That traction with your all-wheel drive system, that's because of mechanical reasons, right? It's not necessarily software, right? Like you get that feel in some cars, right? So, it's just, they're wonderful. One of the best all-wheel drive systems I've ever driven in snow. I'm Midwesterner. I mean, people swear by Subarus. I think it's a better system than Audi's Quattro, to be honest. So anyway, my 2 cents, but,
Well, also, like I said, once again, like with an Audi, most of the cars until recently, they've always been sedans.
yeah.
So they didn't have the ground
Yeah.
clearance, where we've
True.
always had that ground clearance, which actually makes a big difference in snow, And, look, I'm a terrible PR person because took me a long time to convince my niece to buy one, but she lives out in Portland, and they're very outdoorsy people. And she and her husband are what I would call, say, the nice version is fiscally conservative, very, very fiscally conservative.
Sure.
They hold on to their cars for a long time, and they'd moved out there, and I'm like, guys, you need like Subarus are everywhere, but we don't need one. And they were finally right before their wedding, they were going to go look at a venue that's really looking at Hood Mountain or Mount Hood,
Oh,
and
wow.
And really pretty, but they couldn't get up there. They got stuck. She had a Honda Fit because it was a very affordable product, which I'm glad she's very sensible. But they're so outdoorsy. He rock climbs. They camp all the time, and so finally they're like, and then obviously she was with my sister, and a forester goes right by him, climbing right up, zipping right past him, and
That's so funny.
maybe we should get one. And so we got her into, and what sealed the deal though was that the Forester Wilderness, it could carry a rooftop tent.
Okay.
There you go.
And so they were just using that this weekend. I saw she was posting. They were out. They took their 1-year-old Walt, a very cute little kid.
Aw.
They took Walt for his first camping trip, and
In the Subaru.
they're using the tent and everything. And they're like just right out of one of our ads.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've got the dog, they've got the baby, they got the whole thing. It's like, yep. That's kind of who we are. And
The whole
look,
picture.
Look, it makes me smile every time I drive along and I'll see an older Subaru and it's completely covered in stickers,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
marks and all this stuff. And like, hey, it's okay. We're cool with who we are.
Yeah.
We're not trying to impress anybody, and that's a great thing. Like you take any Subaru, it looks way better dirty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I see it looks better. You see a Forester covered in mud after you're done with it. It looked way cooler than the.
I know,
than
right?
It was like, yeah, that looks right.
Tom, I got a story for you real quick. I had a Forester Wilderness press car early this spring, so there was still snow, in the mountains here in Colorado. And of course, we all know Subaru is the official state car of Colorado. But I was doing a piece for Autoblog, and the idea for this piece was to drive to the top of Pikes Peak in winter. Well, what I didn't realize is that they stop you about 2/3 of the way up, right where you hit the snow. But in this adventure, I was the only crazy person up there that day. I got to meet a lot of the people that actually work on the mountain, right? The Pikes Peak Rangers and the people that work. And I told them what I was doing, and they said, well, we all drive Subarus. This is what we all drive, our personal vehicles, and what we wouldn't give to have our work vehicles Subaru as well, right? Because they just think so highly. I'm thinking there might be a marketing opportunity there, a little co-branding with America's Mountain, but these are people that drive these conditions every day, and if we're up to them, that's what they would be driving, would be a Subaru. I thought that
That's
was
great.
priceless.
Great to hear. I do have a good Pikes Peak story. We were introducing the '06 STI and WRX, which is the Hawkeye, right? Surfing 05. And we did it at Pikes Peak. And as you know, like Pikes Peak is a public road. And other than the actual race, they will not shut it down. But we wanted to do this event. So we had to get there at 4 a.m. And only half of it was paved at that point. So
Oh, wow. Oop.
you stopped in the middle. You drove WRX down and back up on the pavement, but STI, you drove all the way to the top and back down on dirt. And I don't know, I'll tell you, nothing will help you focus like driving at dawn in an STI on dirt, sliding and looking at a 14,000-foot drop off with no guardrails.
Talk about a
Literally
motivator.
one of the most terrifying things I've ever done, but a very very memorable press trip. And in the whole thing, we were done by 9:30 in the morning, heading back down. But I mean, that was like I said, that will focus the mind. You know, you're not thinking about anything else while you're doing it. You know, and look, that's partly why we love cars, right? I mean, it is escapism. You can
Yeah.
jump in that. You can do whatever you want. Go for a drive. Go to a pretty area. Go to the woods. Go to a park. Do something like that, and try and get rid of whatever your problems are for the day.
Right. Yeah. It's the
Or
freedom
scare the
to
living hell out of yourself driving.
That's
You know,
right.
I don't
That's
either
want
right.
to.
way, you're ahead of the game. I
Yeah,
know. Well,
yeah.
so I have one last question for this visit. You mentioned Old English cars.
Yeah.
I would love to hear because you always have such an interesting collection. I would love to
Yes.
hear what's in your garage these days.
Well, you know, some of them aren't in the garage because they're getting worked on. But
True to farm.
yeah, yeah. Well, I have an Austin Healey 3000 that I've had for many years now. Yeah, every day I look at Bring a Trailer and I just watch the prices plummet on that car, knowing how much money I've put into it.
Sure.
Right. You're like, I have
It's
a gift.
actually, you know, knock on wood, it's actually running pretty well right now. But that's got an aluminum head. It's got triple Webers, triple 45 Webers
Very
on it.
nice.
It's a Tremec 5-speed. So it's a very early Healy, so it had a side shifter. If any Healy fans are out there, they know how bad that transmission was. That was a transmission that came out of a truck, and it hung off the side of the transmission because, like, you know, how much more weirder can you get? Because the transmission really made it a pain to drive, you know, but it looked so cool because it had the shifter was out of the side of the transmission tunnel. You're like, why is this happening? But
Yeah. Yeah.
very, very cool. So that car's pretty set up. It's got some other stuff done, suspension and things like that. And I'll never ever get the money out of it, but that's fine. I don't care. It's a fun car. It's an authentic driving thing. It's got that great howl. Then there's a Jaguar C-Type race car, a Proteus. It's all aluminum. That is currently leaking even more oil than it normally does, and it's actually in
It's
the shop
overachieving.
trying to figure out what. But you know, they always say a big cat marks its territory. And,
I
There you
love it.
go.
yeah, so and
It's all
it's
about perspective, right?
definitely been doing that. And then the one of the more normalized cars would have been I have an '88 560 SL, which is the German
Right.
Interloper. So I like I said, I was reenacting the Battle of Britain here with German and English, and that's actually not good. That's pretty solid. It needed some stuff when I got it, but
Right.
you know, I personally think they're in a tremendous value for what you can get into one
Yep.
of those cars are, and they feel so unique. They smell differently. They're great. And I used to work at a Mercedes dealer in the '80s, you know, and those were like such cool cars. I think I bought one specifically because I wasn't allowed to drive it. Like I could shuttle other cars around, but I wouldn't let me in that. And for some reason, I'm like, actually the coupe is better. But anyways, that was like, you know, they wouldn't do that. And then I just bought which no one's seen yet because I'm having work done to it. Obviously, it's English. An '80s two-door Range Rover.
Oh, nice.
We never got the
Fantastic.
Range Rover, the two-door Range Rovers
Right.
here. And so I tell you, when I was a child, one of those, there was an early one of those in the Bahamas near where I lived. I remember seeing a white two-door, and the guy, I don't know where it had come from, you know, but it had a box air conditioner on the roof. So it was this
No way.
sitting on the roof of this thing that I think just had air vents going down into the inside. But it was a very striking vehicle. I remember
Sure.
seeing it all the time and going, "That is so cool." And I think it was just in there in my reptilian brain. And the one day I went earlier this year to the Goodwood members meeting, which I'd never done. I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard of that. I just want to kind of go see what the members meeting is like." And it was really cool. It was great. But the day before, I went to a car show, and Kingsley is a company that makes customized high-end resto mod, basically Range Rovers, and they had a bunch of the two doors out there, and I'm like, man, those are so good looking. And I saw
They
one
are.
for sale, and it was still not very expensive, and it's because it has the least loved engine, the VM, the Modori, the Italian. It's got the Italian turbo diesel, which is
Interesting.
supposed to be awful, but it's really interesting, and it has 4 individual cylinder heads. It's a straight 4 turbo diesel, but it's got individual cylinder heads, so you get to repair them individually instead of
Wow.
doing one at a time. I don't know.
How fun.
And people are like, you should probably swap that engine, but I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I want to give it a shot.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the guy before me had spent a lot of money getting that car running and going. So, but it looks cool as can be. It is like super cool
Yeah.
looking. Because I just
So,
sold, I had a Land Rover Series 3, which I sold about
right.
a year ago that I had, which is actually a great car, but I don't have a farm or anywhere to really off road in it, and just
Yeah.
wasn't, I was the coolest guy picking up Chinese food in the car. Everyone
I
loved
mean,
it.
what more do you want?
It was wonderful, but like I said, it's like driving, it's like driving in an old aluminum shed down a
Yeah,
mountain.
yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
cool car.
Tractorish.
I think
Right.
rustic is the word.
That's all I
So,
have at the moment.
Yeah,
so is the
cool.
Range Rover right-hand drive?
No, it's left-hand drive. It's a
Wow.
Spanish
Nice.
car.
Oh,
So
very
they,
cool.
Oh,
they
okay.
only they didn't have a diesel for Spain and Italy, and that's why they marketed with these. And they eventually moved the TDIs, their own, the 300
Interesting.
TDI, into them. But for whatever reason, for tax reasons in Spain and Italy, having a diesel was a big deal. So I kind of want to drive around in it, see how slow it is, and then my
Where do you
I
get the air conditioner for the roof?
I have I have the guy who did the other Land Rover for me, and
Yeah.
he's already telling me what we should swap it with. He's like, "Oh, let's
Okay.
just swap it." I'm like, "No, it runs. It's like it's in. We don't want you don't want to kill a horse that can still run." Sorry about saying killing horses, but it's
We love animals here on
metaphor.
that
But
car
it's
show.
still I would obviously take it off the track. I would have it put into a splint and let that leg heal.
Right.
That's right.
And that's what you're going to do with the car.
Horses
No, I
at the
got
next auto
I-
show, right? There's an idea.
adopt a horse. I got to see
Kind of
one of those.
intrigued. I'm kind of intrigued by it though. Like I want to really
Yeah.
play with it.
I got
That's
to
very
see
cool.
one of those two-door Range Rovers at Car Week last year. I had never seen one in person, and they're so cool. So I'm excited. You'll have to come back and tell us once you get a chance to really experience it, if you're going to
Well,
keep it the way it is, what you're going to
car
do.
accidents led me down to and I'm like, I keep telling myself, I need to get something into get back into something more reasonable, like an Italian car. I don't have any
There you
Italian
go.
cars. I'm like, I really need an old Italian car. It'll look so reliable next to these other
Right,
cars. I'm
right.
like, oh wow.
Right.
We could all use an old Italian car.
Yeah, exactly.
Just good advice
I
in
know.
general.
Yeah.
The spiders are cheap. Get out there and buy one. folks.
Totally.
So I think we
Wonderful, too.
have Dom's two answers for the BS market list is because Haggerty does the bull market list, so we do the That Car Show BS market list, as you know. So the Mercedes and the Alpha.
I'm great with that because like I can tell you exactly will not make you money in the future. I can tell you which car to choose. But I feel there's I don't know if other people do this. I go on Bring a Trailer or I'll look at car ads all the time and I'll see a car that I have no use for whatsoever. Like there was for sale the other day was a 1994 Jaguar XJ12 sedan, and it was just perfect. And it was like $16,000, and I have no place to put it. I don't need it. I don't need it at all. But I'm like, I want someone to save that
Gotta
car.
have it.
Like,
Yeah.
someone don't ruin that. Take care of that car. Give it the support it needs. And pay the $3 million it will cost to drive. Drive it for 200 miles, getting 9 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that's
we
the
can
wonderful
all
thing. They
we can
take
all
you back
relate
a
to
different
that.
time. It's so cool. Cars
Yeah,
will
I think
transport you to a different place. It's wonderful.
Yep.
yeah, that's
it.
true. It's going back in time. And I think we can all relate to like, okay, but like you said, I have no use for this. I have no space for it, but I want to caretake it. Like I want to make sure that it is shepherded
Yes,
well. And a lot of us have fallen into the trap of like, all right, I
I've
have to buy it.
I've always said if I was in that category, I was like a billionaire, and you have access to all this stuff, it'd be very difficult for me to buy like something like a Bugatti Veyron or something. As wonderful and as cool as they are as an engineering, and they're fast and so quick, but I could have like 80 other bad
Right.
cars
Yep.
that would probably give me way more joy than just, hitting 200 miles an hour, which I can't really do.
No.
They look cool, and don't get me wrong. If anyone's out there waiting to give me one, I would totally take it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
if they
You're
give
given
me
a good
my own
home.
choice, I'd have way more fun buying a $35,000, perfect Alpha GTV6.
Yeah,
than,
yeah.
and buying little cars like that. I'd
Yeah.
rather do a bunch of goofy cars than maybe the one crazy car.
For sure. Well, because you can actually drive them, and that's something that we talk about, and I think that's something we've all connected on is like we are drivers and enthusiasts, And so something that you can actually use in your daily life, like you said, to pick up the Chinese food, that's a lot more valuable to me. And like you said, it brings me a lot more joy if I can get in it and drive it, even just to the store to get eggs or whatever. Like that's, you can do that every day. So being able to use it, that means a lot more to me.
And if you can, if you can convince a young person to get into cars because of it, then that's just better. And
Yeah,
hopefully
that's
that'll
the value.
happen. Hopefully they'll put down their phones at some point and be like, hey, you know what?
I know.
Driving's work. I just
I
met a kid
know.
the other day from we were just working with Car and Driver, and they have one of their young guys who's on the team there. He's one of their car gophers, and
Yeah.
he's got like 15 cars all in parts, neons. He's got Subarus, he's got old Dodge
Wow.
Dams, all these cars. And he's building and renting on them. I'm like, that is awesome. I'm so happy to see this really young kid, getting in and being an enthusiast at that level.
I love that.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate you joining us this week,
Yeah,
Dom.
sure. Great talking to you.
Obviously, we barely scratched the surface. You have so many stories, so we will have to do this again. But for now, we will say thank you to everyone. Thank you to you, especially for joining us. And thank you to our audience for joining us this week on That Car Show. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you sharing the show with your enthusiast friends. Please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a 5-star review. Remember to always be driving, and we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you.